Next, we're going to focus on constructing a histogram. I'm going to walk you step by step and show you how you can construct a histogram using Google Sheets. To create a histogram, we need a data set. So here you have one. The following data are the heights in inches to the nearest half inch of 100 male semi-professional soccer players. Make a histogram with 8 bars. So here you're going to be told how many bars you're going to have. That is going to be helpful to determine the class boundaries. Notice we have data values. They're being separated by a semicolon. Here we have the data set. We should have 100 data values. Okay. The first step to creating a histogram is to find the range. The range is equal to the largest value minus the smallest value. We need to take the largest value, which is 74, minus the smallest value, which is 60. The range is equal to 74 minus 60, which is equal to 14. That is going to be the range. The second step would be to pick the number of classes to use. In this problem, we're being asked to use 8 bars, so we're going to be using 8 classes. Now, you might be wondering, how do you know we should use 8 classes? Can we use 9? Can we use 10? And the answer is yes, maybe you can use 9, you can use 10. Now, let me give you some examples where we might have too many classes or not enough classes. And because of that, the histogram ends up not being a good representation of the data. I'm just going to be playing around with the data that we have. Here, I went ahead and created 15 bars. The width of each bar is 1. This would not be a good visual. Using 15 classes is going to make it seem like we have a big spread in the data set. Now notice we also have some class boundaries that don't have any data values. We have some classes that only have a few data values. It's not a good representation of the graph. Now, what if I use 3 bars? Notice, not a good representation of the data. I can see that there's about, 22 data values between 60 and 65. The width of that class boundary is too large for me to be able to see the data values and for me to be able to interpret the data values between 60 and 65. Same thing with the other bars. The width of those bars is too large. So that is what I mean when I say, in order to pick the number of classes, you need to play around with the data set. So again, we're going to use 8 classes. And in this class, if I ask you to construct a histogram, I tell you how many classes you need to use. That way we end up with the same graph. Okay, the third step is to find the class width. To find the class width, you need to take the largest value minus the smallest value. That is the range. We take the range divided by the number of bars. Now, here's a big remark. You're always going to round up to the next integer. Even if the answer is already an integer, go to the next integer. Why? If we don't do this, if we don't round up, we're going to end up not having a class boundary that is going to include the largest data value of our data set. If you're creating a histogram and you're noticing the last data value is not included in none of the class boundaries, then you know that you made a mistake. You forgot to round up. In this case, our class width, we have 14 divided by the number of bars, which is 8. We get 1.75. We always need to round up to the nearest integer, so we're going to round up to 2. And that is going to be the class width. Now, let's say that instead of 1.75, we got, let me give you another example. Let's say we got 1.4. If you got 1.4, you're still going to be rounding up to 2. Always round up to the nearest integer. Okay. Now, let's say you got something like, let's say your answer was 3. If your answer is 3, you need to round up to the next integer. That's the second sentence that we have here under the remark. Okay. So again, if you calculate the class width and you got 3, you need to round up to the next integer. So you would round up to 4. Okay. That is the remark that is being done there. In step 4, I want you to stop and think about the lower class limit for the first class. What is going to be the lower class limit for the first class? Well, we're going to start with the smallest data value. In this case, it is 60. Now we have everything we need to create a frequency table for each of the classes. The first class is going to range from 60 to 62. How do I know that? Well, because it has to start at 60, as we mentioned before in step 4, and the width for the class is 2. Therefore, the upper bound for the class boundary is going to be 62. I'm going to be using a bracket here. The bracket is going to represent that any data values equal to 60 are going to be under this class boundary. I'm using a parenthesis next to 62, and the parenthesis represents that values equal to 62, data values equal to 62 are not going to be included in this class boundary. Bracket means included, parentheses means not included. So again, if you have the data value 62, 62 is not going to be in this class boundary. How many data values do we have between 60 and 62, including the data values that are equal to 60? Well, let's go ahead and look at our data set. We have 60, 65, 61, 61, 61.5, and those are all the values between 60 and 62. How many do we have? We have a total of 5 values. Okay? So this class boundary has a frequency equal to 5. Okay? Now, what's the next class boundary? The next class boundary is going to include all the values equal to 62 up to values equal to 64. Let me go ahead and use a parenthesis to indicate the data values equal to 64 are not included in this class boundary. Okay? So let's go ahead and count how many values we have in this class boundary. We have 63.5, 63.5, 63.5. Do we include 64? No, we're not including 64. Okay, again, we're using a parenthesis to remind ourselves that that class boundary does not include 64. So we have a total of 3 data values in that class boundary. Next class boundary is ranging from 64 to 66, including 64, not including 66. Let's go ahead and see how many data values we have in this class boundary. I'm going to go ahead and highlight all the data values in that class boundary, ranging from 64, including 64, all the way to 66, but it does not include 66. So I'm not going to include the data values equal to 66. Okay. Go ahead and count how many we have. We have a total of 15 data values in that class. Go ahead and finish this table. You can pause the video here, and then you can play the video to see the completed table. Here are the classes, and here are the frequencies for each of those classes. Go ahead and double check my work. My apologies if I made a mistake. I already checked, and I see that the frequencies do add up to 100. I also went ahead and counted twice to make sure that I did count correctly. Now, with this table, you would be able to create a histogram by hand. You would have each of the class boundaries on the x-axis. You would have the frequencies on the y-axis. Now, I don't want you to create the histogram by hand. I want you to create the histogram using Google Sheets. Now, if we're going to use Google Sheets, we're going to use the list of data values. We're going to copy the list of data values to Google Sheets. Now, remember, we need 8 classes and we need the width of each of those classes to be 2. We also need to remember that the smallest value is 60 and the largest value is 64. I'm going to be using Google Sheets. On one of the cells, I'm going to paste the list of data values. If we try to insert a histogram using this list, it's not going to work. We need each of the data values to be in a single cell. So here's what we need to do. I'm being lazy. I don't want to type each of the data values on Excel. That's why I'm doing it this way. Okay. Click on the cell and then click on data. Now go down to where it says split text to columns. you're going to see an option to indicate how you want to make this separation. We're going to click on semicolon, right? The data values are being separated using a semicolon. Okay, and now we have the data values, each on a separate cell. So now I'm going to go ahead and click on the first row to highlight everything we have on that row. Okay. Now that you highlighted all the data values, now you can click on insert. You're going to click on chart. And here you have it. You have a histogram. There are some adjustments that we need to make. We need to have a title. We need to have labels on the x-axis and the y-axis. And we're also going to need to fix the number of bars that we have. So let's go over to customize. Let's start with the easy part. Let's go ahead and write a title. Height of male semi-professional soccer players. Let's center the title. Let's go ahead and make it darker. Now let's add titles to the x-axis and the y-axis. Under customize, we're going to look for chart and axis titles. Let's go ahead and first edit the vertical axis title. The vertical axis has the frequencies. We're going to type frequency. Again, go ahead and make it darker. Now let's move on to the horizontal axis title. Let's write height. And in parentheses, we're going to include the units in inches. And again, we're going to make it darker. Now let's go ahead and edit the number of bars. Under customize, click on histogram. And then go ahead and click on bucket size. Google Sheets calls the bars buckets. The width of our bars is 2. So that is the first edit that we needed to make. Okay. Now you see that we have 8 bars. Now let's go ahead and fix the range for the x-axis. So let me go ahead and close this. I'm going to go down to the horizontal axis and I need to go ahead and indicate that the x-axis needs to range from 60 to 76. And there you have it. Notice we have all the classes that we had on our frequency table. The first class being the class ranging from 60 to 62. The last class being the class ranging from 74 to 76. We're noticing that the width of all the classes is 2. Okay? And there you have it. This is our histogram. Again, you could create this histogram by hand, right? You would be able to draw the x and y axis. On the x-axis, you will start the first class going from 60 to 62. The height of that class would be 5 because the frequency for that class is 5. Okay. Same thing with the next class. The next class will go from 62 to 64. We have 3 data values in this class boundary. So the frequency is 3. That means that the height of the bar is 3.